Give it as a compliment, Sterling Blackwood said, smiling with every tooth, his navy blazer over a crisp white dress shirt catching the full-length afternoon light streaming through the bank's glass facade, khaki slacks pressed to a crease that could have cut paper. We take transfers of this size very, very seriously. He slid the hold notice across the marble counter with one finger, the way you push something towards someone you've already decided doesn't deserve a full hand. Dr. Owen Hargrove looked at the paper. Then he looked at the two security guards Sterling had positioned on either side of him, short-sleeved black uniforms, arms crossed, visible to every single person in the sunlit lobby, and then he looked at the 11 strangers in line behind him who had stopped moving, stopped talking, stopped pretending not to stare at the black man in the slate-gray surgical top and dark slacks who apparently needed to be guarded while attempting to wire $2.3 million to fund a medical center for children who looked like him. Dr. Owen Hargrove exhaled once through his nose, picked up the hold notice, folded it in half, tucked it inside the leather portfolio he'd carried out of a 9-hour neurosurgery rotation without sleeping, and said, "Do you know who owns this bank?" Sterling chuckled. "Sir, because he called me this morning," Dr. Owen Hargrove said. "About tomorrow, about the summit. Would you like me to call him back right now? Welcome to Frost Folktales. This is where we tell the stories of those who were underestimated, dismissed, and targeted, yet chose courage over silence. If these stories move you, subscribe and be part of a community that refuses to let them fade into the background." The Pinnacle Trust flagship branch on Meridian Avenue was the kind of building that had been designed to communicate permanence. 40-foot ceilings, marble floors the color of cream and smoke, overhead fluorescent panels running the full length of the lobby in precise rows, supplemented by natural light pouring through a glass facade that faced west, which meant that at 2:30 in the afternoon on a clear Tuesday in October, the entire front half of the lobby was bathed in the kind of clean, unforgiving daylight that left nothing in shadow and nowhere to hide. Dr. Owen Hargrove had walked in at 2:22 p.m. He had come directly from Meridian General Hospital, still wearing his slate-gray surgical top tucked into dark slacks, his hospital badge clipped at his waist, the leather portfolio under his left arm holding the wire transfer documentation, the construction account routing numbers, and the authorization letter from the Hargrove Community Medical Center project attorney. He had called ahead. He had a confirmed appointment with the private banking desk. He had been a client of Pinnacle Trust for 11 years, holding 3 accounts, 2 of which had cleared individual transactions larger than most people's mortgages. He had done everything right. He always did everything right. That was the part that Sterling Blackwood had not accounted for. Sterling Blackwood had come out of his glass-walled office the moment the wire transfer amount appeared on the teller's screen. That was the tell. He hadn't walked, he'd moved with the specific, purposeful energy of a man who had already made a decision and was now constructing the paperwork around it. He was trim, mid-40s, with the kind of permanent half-smile that read as pleasant from a distance and revealed itself as something else entirely at close range. He'd introduced himself as the branch manager, shaken Dr. Owen Hargrove's hand with 2 pumps and a grip slightly too firm to be welcoming, and then begun the careful, layered architecture of a public humiliation dressed up as policy. The guards had appeared before the hold notice did. That was important. That was the sequence. Sterling Blackwood had already made 2 calls from his office before he came out to the counter, and by the time he produced the hold notice from the interior pocket of his navy blazer and slid it across the marble with that one-finger push, Reginald Stokes and another guard named Ferris were already flanking Dr. Owen Hargrove at a distance of roughly 4 feet on either side. Close enough to be a statement, far enough to be deniable. The lobby had gone quiet in stages. First the teller directly across from Dr. Owen Hargrove, a young woman in her 20s who kept her eyes on her keyboard and went very still. Then the couple at the adjacent counter, who stopped their own transaction mid-sentence and turned slightly without fully turning. Then the man second in line, who lowered his phone. Then the young mother near the far wall with the stroller, who had been bouncing the baby gently and automatically, and who stopped bouncing, stood straighter, and watched. Then one by one, all 11 people in the line behind the velvet rope, standing in the overhead fluorescent light and the wide afternoon sun, watching a black man in a surgical top get flanked by security guards at a marble counter in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. Sterling Blackwood had not lowered his voice once. That was the other thing. He could have. He had a glass office 12 feet behind him with a door that closed. He could have said, very quietly, that there was a matter that required additional review and asked Dr. Owen Hargrove to step inside. He could have made it private. He had chosen not to. Every word he said was calibrated for the lobby's acoustics, not quite shouting, but fully audible, the professional register of a man making a public announcement while maintaining the fiction that he was having a personal conversation. "These are standard compliance protocols for transfers at this threshold," Sterling said now, recovering from the question about the bank's owner with the kind of smooth redirect that came from years of managing people he'd already categorized. His smile had not completely left, but something behind it had shifted, a tightening, barely visible, like a cable pulled 1 degree past comfortable. "It's nothing personal, Dr. Hargrove. If anything," he gestured slightly with one open hand, "think of it as a compliment. It means the transfer is large enough to matter." Dr. Owen Hargrove looked at him. He did not look angry. That was the first thing Vivienne Osai noticed from her position 7 places back in the line, where she had been standing for the last 9 minutes waiting to handle a routine transaction of her own, and had watched the entire sequence unfold with a growing cold weight in her chest. Dr. Owen Hargrove's face was composed, not the composed of someone suppressing an explosion, the composed of someone who had already moved past the emotion and into something quieter and more deliberate. His hands were still. His posture had not changed. He was standing the same way he stood at the head of an operating table, present, calibrated, unhurried. He looked at Sterling Blackwood for 4 seconds without speaking. Then he looked down at the hold notice in his portfolio. Then he looked to his right, at Reginald Stokes in the short-sleeved black uniform, who was looking at a fixed point on the marble floor with the careful vacancy of a man trying to be invisible inside his own body. Then he looked to his left at Ferris, who met his eyes for half a second and looked away. Then he looked back at the lobby, at the line of 11 people, at the young mother, at the tellers behind their glass, at the full sunlit room watching him, and he took it all in without blinking, without rushing, without performing anything at all. That look was not nothing. The audience needed to understand. That look was the whole story in 10 seconds. That look was a man measuring the precise dimensions of what was being done to him and deciding, in real time and with complete clarity, how he was going to respond. He turned back to Sterling Blackwood. 3 to 5 business days, he said. Sterling nodded, relieved to be back in familiar procedural territory. Standard review window for transfers of this. The Hargrove Community Medical Center construction account is expecting this wire before the end of the week, Dr. Owen Hargrove said. His voice was level and conversational. There are 47 families in Delwood Heights waiting on the funding confirmation to break ground on a pediatric clinic. I don't think they'd find 3 to 5 business days very funny. Sterling Blackwood's smile did the thing again, the tightening. I understand your frustration, sir, but my hands are tied by compliance protocol, and I'd be doing you a disservice if I... Mr. Blackwood, Dr. Owen Hargrove said. Sterling stopped. I'm not frustrated. He said it plainly, without edge, in the same tone he would have used to correct a minor factual error in a patient chart. I want to be clear about that. I'm not raising my voice. I haven't challenged anyone. I provided complete documentation before I arrived, and I've been a client of this institution for 11 years across 3 accounts. What I am is clear. And what I want to be clear about, he held Sterling Blackwood's gaze, is that the man who owns this building called my cell phone this morning at 8:47, and the conversation was about the summit tomorrow, and the foundation partnership, and the dinner afterward. So before you finish writing that compliance memo you've already started composing in your head, I'd think carefully about the name on the account and what it connects to. The lobby had not made a sound. Sterling Blackwood held his smile. It cost him something to hold it, and the room could see the cost, even if Sterling could not. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He opened it again with the language of institutional procedure already loaded: large transfer, review window, standard hold, protect the client, and he deployed it because it was the only ground he had left. He thanked Dr. Owen Hargrove for his patience. He suggested that Dr. Owen Hargrove would receive a follow-up communication within 1 business day. He held out a copy of the whole documentation across the counter. Dr. Owen Hargrove took it with one hand, placed it into the leather portfolio without looking at it, and said, "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood." That was all. He turned. He walked. The 2 guards, Reginald Stokes and Ferris, followed him for 4 steps before Reginald stopped himself, seemed to register something. Went still. Ferris took a 5th step, then a 6th, then stopped also. Dr. Owen Hargrove walked the rest of the lobby alone, through the full fluorescent and natural light, past the velvet rope, past the line of 11 people who watched him go, past the young mother with the stroller who made the smallest movement, a slight pull of her baby closer to her chest as he passed, and out through the glass doors into the broad Tuesday afternoon. The October light hit him full on. He did not squint. He did not slow down. Vivienne Osei was out the door behind him in 30 seconds, her own transaction abandoned, her bag over her shoulder, moving fast until she came around the corner of the building and found him standing beside a black sedan in the surface lot, portfolio under his arm, not on his phone, not pacing, simply standing in the afternoon sun and looking at nothing in particular with that same unbothered stillness. Owen, she stopped in front of him. She had known him for 6 years. She had seen him work on the most critical surgical cases their hospital received. She had never seen anyone do to him what Sterling Blackwood had just done in that lobby, and the fact that he was standing here looking calm did not mean she was calm, and her voice carried all of it. "Are you all right?" Dr. Owen Hargrove looked at her. Something moved across his face, not distress, not performance. Just a brief, honest acknowledgement that the question deserved a real answer. Then he said, "I'm going to let this one finish itself." He opened the car door, set the portfolio on the passenger seat, and looked back once through the glass facade of the Pinnacle Trust branch, where Sterling Blackwood was visible behind his glass office wall, already at his desk, already typing, already building the procedural record of a man completely certain he had done exactly the right thing. Dr. Owen Hargrove got in the car. Sterling Blackwood kept typing. Neither of them knew yet which one of them had just made the most consequential mistake of the last 11 years. But one of them was about to find out. The parking structure beneath Pinnacle Trust's downtown branch smelled like concrete dust and exhaust. Level 2, Bay 14. Dr. Owen Hargrove had pulled in and cut the engine and had not moved since. The afternoon light came through the open sides of the structure in long horizontal bars, falling across the dashboard in stripes of gold and shadow. It was the kind of light that made everything look like it was already a memory. Vivienne Osei sat in the passenger seat with her hands folded in her lap, her white coat still on over a fitted burgundy top and dark gray trousers, her hospital badge turned backward the way she always wore it when she was off the clock but not quite off duty. She had not pressed him. She had followed him out of the bank, gotten in the car when he unlocked it, and waited. That was the thing about Vivienne. She knew when silence was the right instrument. Dr. Owen Hargrove stared through the windshield at the gray concrete wall in front of them. A yellow number 14 was stenciled at eye level. He had his hands on his thighs still, and the leather portfolio sat in his lap like something he was protecting. "You ate today?" Vivienne asked finally. "Granola bar, around 6. That was this morning, I'm aware." She let another beat pass. Then she said, "Owen." He exhaled slowly through his nose. He reached down and unzipped the portfolio and opened it across the center console between them. Inside, behind the hold notice he had folded and tucked away, were the project documents. He had carried them in this portfolio for 11 months. He pulled them out now and laid them flat across his lap and hers, the pages overlapping at the edges, architectural renderings, site surveys, a project timeline, a capital breakdown with his name at the top of the funding column. Vivienne looked down. She had seen pieces of this before. She had never seen all of it together, spread out in this light against this afternoon. Hargrove Community Medical Center, she read from the top of the rendering sheet. The building in the drawing was modest and purposeful, 2 stories, wide windows, a covered entrance with ramp access, a playground visible along the east side. Full-service pediatric and family care, Delwood Heights. "That's where I'm from," Dr. Owen Hargrove said. "That neighborhood." Vivienne nodded slowly. "When I was growing up," he said and stopped. He turned his face slightly toward the window where the afternoon light moved in from the street level below. "There was a clinic on Meridian, 2 blocks from our apartment, nothing fancy. It was in the bottom floor of a building that used to be a dry cleaner. But it was there. And people used it." He paused. "It closed when I was 9, lease issue, funding cut, something. One day it was there and then it wasn't, and the nearest alternative was County General, which was 45 minutes on 2 buses on a good day." Vivienne did not look up from the documents. She was listening with her whole body. "My mother," he stopped again. This was the part he had never quite learned to say at normal speed. "My mother, Renata, she figured out the bus routes like it was a second job. She had them memorized. She had the transfer times written on a notepad she kept in the kitchen drawer. 3 buses on bad days if the crosstown was running slow. She never complained about it. She just learned the schedule." He looked at the rendering again, the wide windows, the playground. "Caleb got sick the summer I was 12. His voice stayed level. That was the discipline of it. 12 years of medical training had given him a language for suffering that kept it at a functional distance, and he had used that language so many times that it had become automatic. But today, the distance was shorter than usual. My brother, he was 8. It started as a fever. One of those fevers that comes and goes for a day, and you think it's going to break on its own. He pressed the portfolio edge with his thumb. By the third day, it was septic. His temperature was 104.3 when my mother finally called a neighbor to drive them to County General because the buses weren't running on schedule and she could not carry him and manage the transfers. Vivienne looked up at him. Her expression was the one he had seen her use in the pediatric unit when a family needed information and steadiness at the same time. He made it, Dr. Owen Hargrove said. 3 weeks inpatient. They got the infection under control, but the sepsis, the progression, the delay in treatment, the hours it took to get to a facility that could actually handle what was happening, there was damage. Inner ear. He walked out of County General with 40% hearing loss in his left ear. He paused. He wears a hearing aid. He has worn one since he was 8 years old. The parking structure was quiet around them. Somewhere below, a car started and pulled out, the sound of its engine rising and then fading. The 2-3 million, Dr. Owen Hargrove said, is not a donation. I need you to understand that. It is not philanthropy. It is not a legacy project. It is a debt. He looked at the capital breakdown on the page. The number was printed there in clean 12-point font, the same number that Sterling Blackwood had flagged and frozen and announced to a lobby full of strangers as if it were evidence of something wrong. I have been calculating it since I was 12 years old, sitting in that waiting room at County General, watching my mother fill out paperwork with shaking hands because she was trying not to cry in front of me and Caleb. That number is what it costs to put a full-service clinic in Delwood Heights so that no other family has to learn a 3-bus schedule to get their sick child to care. Vivienne was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very carefully, when Sterling Blackwood called that transfer suspicious. He was calling this suspicious, Dr. Owen Hargrove said. He touched the corner of the rendering. He was calling my mother suspicious. He was calling a waiting room in County General suspicious. He didn't know that because he didn't ask, but that's what he called it. Vivienne closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were clear and sharp, which was what happened to Vivienne when she transitioned from feeling something to deciding something. We should report it, Owen. The bank has a fair lending division. You have grounds for a formal complaint. What he did in that lobby, the guards alone, Dr. Owen Hargrove shook his head, not dismissively, thoughtfully, the way he shook it when a resident proposed a surgical approach he had already considered and set aside. He's going to report himself, he said. What does that mean? It means he's not done. Dr. Owen Hargrove gathered the project documents and slid them back into the portfolio with the precision of a man organizing something he intended to use again soon. A man like that doesn't flag a transfer, embarrass a client in public, and go home satisfied. He writes it up. He escalates it. He builds a record to justify what he already did. He zipped the portfolio closed. And when he does that, the record will show what the account actually contains, who the client actually is, what the transfer was actually for. He will construct the case for his own dismantling, and he will do it thoroughly because that is the kind of man he is. Vivienne studied him. You're going to let it play out. I'm going to let it finish itself, he said. It was the same thing he had said outside the bank doors in the sun, with the guards still watching through the glass. He had known it then, too. He put the portfolio on the back seat. He adjusted the mirror. He started the car. They rode up the parking structure ramp and out into the afternoon, turning east toward Delwood Heights. Dr. Owen Hargrove had not planned the route consciously. It was simply where the car went when his mind was there. He had been 12 in that waiting room. He had watched his mother hold Caleb's hand across a row of plastic chairs, while a television mounted in the corner cycled through afternoon programming. No one was watching. He remembered the smell of the room. He remembered counting the ceiling tiles. He remembered a doctor coming out to speak to his mother and seeing her shoulders drop, not in grief, but in relief, so deep it looked like collapse, and understanding for the first time that the outcome of something this serious could be shaped by proximity, by minutes, by bus routes and transfer times, and whether a clinic 2 blocks from your apartment had its lease renewed. He had not become a neurosurgeon by accident. He had become one because the brain was the organ that decided everything, the organ where the waiting room damage lived, where the fear compounded, where a child learned whether the world considered his life retrievable. He had spent 20 years learning to work inside that organ with the most precise instruments medicine had produced. And now he was trying to do something simpler and more radical at the same time, put a door in a neighborhood where there had not been a door, so that the first decision a family made when someone got sick was not a calculation about bus fare. They turned onto Meridian Avenue as the sun began its slide toward the western buildings, and the light went gold and long across the street. He did not slow the car. He let the neighborhood move past the windows, the corner stores, the schoolyard, the apartment buildings with their layered histories visible in the brickwork until they reached the block where the clinic used to be. The dry cleaners building was a cell phone repair shop now. The sign was bright green. A kid on a bicycle was chaining it to the post out front. Dr. Owen Hargrove did not stop. He drove 3 more blocks to the construction site. It was the first time he had come to it not in an official capacity, not with the architect or the project manager or the city permitting officer. He pulled to the curb and sat there with the engine idling. The site was bare earth behind a chain-link fence, a rectangle of Delwood Heights that had been cleared and graded and was waiting for what came next. The late afternoon light fell across it in a warm, flat wash that made the dirt look almost amber, the fence casting long shadows in parallel lines across the ground. A sign was fixed to the fence in white and blue lettering, clean and straight, future home of the Hargrove Community Medical Center, and at the far corner of the fence, where the sidewalk bent, a small boy stood with his fingers hooked through the chain link, his face pressed against the metal, looking in. He was maybe 7. He wore a red sweatshirt and dark pants, and he was looking at the empty lot with the focused attention of a child who was trying to understand what a thing was going to become. He stood there for a long moment, not moving, just looking. Dr. Owen Hargrove watched him through the windshield. He thought about Caleb, 8 years old, in a hospital bed with an Roman 4 in his arm and a fever that had gone too far for too long because the distance between sick and help had been 3 buses and 45 minutes. He thought about what Sterling Blackwood had written on a hold notice with one finger and slid across a marble counter in a sunlit lobby. He thought about what a door 2 blocks from where you live means to a mother who has memorized a bus schedule because she had no other option. He put the car in drive. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. Vivienne Osai sat beside him and watched the boy at the fence grow smaller in the side mirror as they pulled away, and she understood completely, finally, in the way that only witnessing the full weight of something allows exactly what was at stake. Not the 2-3 million, not the wire transfer, not the hold notice folded in a leather portfolio on the back seat. The boy at the fence. That was what was at stake. That was what Sterling Blackwood had touched without knowing it. And Dr. Owen Hargrove was going to let the system finish what it had started, because he had built something that could not be stopped by a hold notice. And the only thing left to do now was wait for the world to catch up to what he already knew. The Harmon Grand Hotel stood at the corner of Meridian and 5th, like a promise somebody had actually kept. 32 floors of glass and pale limestone, lit from below by recessed ground lights that turned the whole facade into something that felt less like a building and more like an announcement. Dr. Owen Hargrove stepped out of his car at 6:22 p.m., still in the same dark slacks he had worn to the hospital that morning. Though he had changed into a clean charcoal dress shirt with the top button open, his leather portfolio tucked under his left arm. The evening air was still warm. Downtown held its heat long after the sun began to let go of it. He stood on the sidewalk for exactly 3 seconds and looked at the hotel's entrance, the brass fixtures, the revolving door turning slowly for a woman with a rolling suitcase. The 2 uniformed doormen who had already clocked him from 20 feet away. One of them stepped forward before Dr. Owen Hargrove had even moved. Dr. Hargrove, the doorman said it the way people say the name of someone they have been expecting, not reading it off a list. Expecting, Mr. Marsh is in the ballroom. He asked me to walk you straight through. Dr. Owen Hargrove nodded once. Thank you. 4 hours earlier, a man in a navy blazer had slid a hold notice across a marble counter with one finger and stationed guards on either side of him like he was a problem to be contained. Now a doorman at one of the finest hotels in the city was parting the crowd to make a clear path. The geography had changed. The man had not moved an inch. Dalton Marsh spotted him from across the hotel lobby before the elevator doors finished opening. He was already moving long strides, wire-rimmed glasses catching the light from the lobby's overhead chandeliers, his charcoal suit jacket open over a light blue dress shirt and grey trousers, a lanyard with a summit credential swinging from his neck. He was the kind of man who was always slightly ahead of himself, always 3 tasks into the next hour while still finishing the current one. Right now, all 3 of those tasks appeared to be Dr. Owen Hargrove. Doctor. He extended both hands. Not a single handshake. Both hands, the way people do when the person in front of them represents something larger than a greeting. Thank you for coming in tonight. I know it's been a long day. You were in surgery this morning, correct? 9 hours, closer to 9.5, Dr. Owen Hargrove said. Dalton Marsh looked at him like he had just said something extraordinary. And you're still standing. That alone should be the keynote. He laughed at his own joke, pivoted immediately, and swept one arm toward the corridor that opened off the main lobby. Come, I want you to see it before the crew finishes setting the second camera rig. The ballroom was through a set of double doors at the end of a corridor, lined with framed photographs of every Pinnacle Trust annual summit, going back 22 years. Dr. Owen Hargrove glanced at them as he walked. Year after year of handshakes and podiums and rooms full of men in dark suits holding champagne glasses. He recognized one face in the 2019 photograph, Montgomery Ellis, standing slightly apart from the group. The way a man stands when he built the room and doesn't need to perform his belonging in it. The double doors opened and the ballroom opened with them. It was enormous. The kind of room that rearranges the scale of things. Overhead, a grid of recessed fluorescent panels ran the full length of the ceiling, supplemented by a row of skylights along the east wall that, even at this hour, still held the last deep blue of the evening sky above the city. 400 chairs were arranged in curved rows facing a stage at the far end, a clean black stage with a single podium, a rear projection screen, and 3 cameras already positioned on rigs at the sides and back of the room. The center aisle was wide enough to drive a car through. Every chair had a small printed program on its seat. Dr. Owen Hargrove could read the cover from 20 feet away. Pinnacle Trust, Investor Summit Keynote, Dr. Owen Hargrove, Capital with Conscience. Dalton Marsh was talking. He was always talking. Financial press from 3 networks. We have crews from Capital Report, The Market Standard, and a crew from NBS's Afternoon Financial Block who specifically requested floor access because of your keynote. Board members from 8 of our 12 regional offices are flying in. We have the Meridian Group, Aldrich Capital Partners, 2 sovereign wealth fund representatives, and the full Pinnacle Trust senior leadership team seated front and center. He paused. 400 chairs, every one of them spoken for. Dr. Owen Hargrove walked the center aisle slowly. He ran his left hand along the back of one of the chairs as he passed. He was listening to Dalton Marsh, but he was also doing something else, something quieter. He was measuring the distance between this room and a bank lobby on the other side of the city, where 11 people had stood in line and watched 2 guards take up positions beside him like he was a threat. The AV team has your presentation file loaded, Dalton Marsh continued, consulting his phone now as they walked. Your opening remarks run about 12 minutes, then the main address we have you down for 38:40 max. Q&A is built into the program for 20 minutes after. The foundation is also sending a representative who will have a brief acknowledgement spot after your close, which I think you'll appreciate because it connects directly to the Delwood Heights project. He looked up. How is that coming, by the way? The medical center. Dr. Owen Hargrove looked at him steadily. There was a delay today with a wire transfer. I expect it to be resolved. Oh, Dalton Marsh frowned the way a man frowns when he hears about a problem in someone else's lane. Thanks, I'm sorry. Anything I can do? No, Dr. Owen Hargrove said simply. It's already in motion. What Dalton Marsh did not know, and there was no reason he should, was that the wire in question had been initiated from account number 3 of the 3 accounts Dr. Owen Hargrove maintained with Pinnacle Trust. Account 1 held his primary operating funds. Account 2 was his investment liquidity account, which he used for equity movements, and held a current balance that would make most branch managers pause before speaking casually. Account 3 was the designated philanthropic account, built over 4 years specifically for capital-intensive, giving the Delwood Heights Medical Center was its largest and most deliberate deployment to date. The 3 million Sterling Blackwood had flagged as suspicious was, in fact, the most carefully documented, most thoroughly structured, most explicitly purposeful transaction Dr. Owen Hargrove had ever initiated. His total relationship with Pinnacle Trust, across all 3 accounts, across 15 years of surgical income, speaking fees, and equity stakes, was valued at a level that made the downtown branch's entire annual transaction volume look like a rounding error. Dalton Marsh did not know any of this because he was the head of investor relations, not the head of retail operations, and the two divisions of a bank the size of Pinnacle Trust communicated with each other approximately as often as two ships passing in the dark. He knew Dr. Owen Hargrove as the keynote. He knew the keynote as the summit's centerpiece. He knew the summit as his professional moment. That was the full picture from where Dalton Marsh stood, and it was more than enough to make him walk fast and talk faster. They reached the stage. Dalton Marsh gestured to the stairs on the left side. Dr. Owen Hargrove climbed them without hesitation. The podium was solid dark wood, a flat surface, a small built-in light angled down to illuminate notes. He set his leather portfolio on it and looked out at the room. 400 empty chairs. The overhead lights bright and clean. The evening sky still visible through the skylights, darkening now to the blue-black of a city night. 3 camera rigs waiting. A rear screen with his name on it. Dalton Marsh was still talking from the floor below, something about sound levels and the order of the opening remarks. Dr. Owen Hargrove let it wash past him. He thought about Montgomery Ellis. They had met 8 years ago at the Meridian Medical Philanthropy Gala, a crowded room, late in the evening, and Dr. Owen Hargrove had been standing near a window answering a question from a young medical student who had somehow gotten a ticket and was asking, with complete sincerity, how you decided what was worth building. Dr. Owen Hargrove had been in the middle of answering when he noticed an older man nearby had stopped pretending to look at the table settings and was listening directly. Silver-haired, patient, with the particular stillness of someone who had spent decades learning how to hear what people meant rather than just what they said. Montgomery Ellis had introduced himself afterward, not with his title, just his name. They had talked for 40 minutes. 2 weeks later, Dr. Owen Hargrove had received a handwritten letter, actual ink, on actual paper, inviting him to serve on a philanthropic advisory panel Montgomery Ellis was quietly assembling. They had since had dinner 6 times, in restaurants where reservations were made weeks in advance, and nobody rushed the table. They did not agree on everything. That was, Dr. Owen Hargrove suspected, a significant part of why Montgomery Ellis kept calling. That morning before the hospital rotation, before the branch, before Sterling Blackwood's smile, Montgomery Ellis had called at 7:14 a.m. to confirm his attendance at the summit, and to mention, in the careful way he mentioned things he considered important, that he wanted to find time after the keynote for a private conversation about the medical center, about what Pinnacle Trust's foundation could potentially do to extend what Dr. Owen Hargrove had started. He had said he had been thinking about it since Thanksgiving and that he wanted to do something that lasted. Dr. Owen Hargrove had said he looked forward to it. Sterling Blackwood had never heard that phone call. Sterling Blackwood had never seen the 3 accounts. Sterling Blackwood had never read the keynote title on the program sitting on 400 chairs in the ballroom of the Harmon Grand Hotel. Sterling Blackwood had read one thing, and one thing only: a transaction amount. A man's face, and whatever story those 2 inputs constructed in a mind that had already decided what it was looking at before it had finished looking, and he had gone home satisfied. Dr. Owen Hargrove stood at the podium and said nothing. He did not rehearse his opening. He did not shuffle notes. He looked at 400 empty chairs, and he was completely still, and in the stillness he allowed himself one thing he had not allowed in the parking garage, not in the car ride over, not in the conversation with Vivienne Osai. He allowed himself to feel exactly how much the afternoon had cost him, not the money, not the wire, the way the lobby had gone quiet, the way Reginald Stokes had looked at the floor, the way Sterling Blackwood's smile had held just barely, like a man so certain of his own authority that doubt hadn't even knocked yet. He felt it fully, and then he set it down. Tomorrow, 400 chairs would be full, 3 cameras would be rolling, and Montgomery Ellis would be seated in the center aisle, watching with the focused attention of a man who was already thinking about what came next. Dr. Owen Hargrove picked up his leather portfolio from the podium. He turned and walked back down the stairs. Dalton Marsh was waiting at the bottom with a revised run-of-show printout and a question about parking validation. "Everything looked good up there?" Dalton Marsh asked. Dr. Owen Hargrove looked back at the room once the lights, the chairs, his name on the screen. "It's ready," he said. Dalton Marsh smiled, relieved, and moved on to the next item on his list. He had no idea that the most important thing that would happen at this summit had nothing to do with what was already scheduled. The branch had been closed for 47 minutes. The tellers were gone. The lobby lights had cycled down from their full fluorescent brightness to the low amber glow of the after-hours security, setting overhead panels still on, but dimmed, the natural light from the glass facade fading to the deep blue of early evening. The marble counters sat empty. The stanchion ropes hung slack between their posts like a theater after the curtain. Every station wiped clean, every drawer locked. Every transaction logged and balanced and closed. The building was done with its day. Sterling Blackwood had not left his desk. He sat behind the glass wall of his branch manager office with his laptop open and his jacket still on, navy blazer buttoned at the middle, white dress shirt collar tight at the throat, the way it had been since 8 that morning. His khaki slacks had a crease in them that had started sharp and gone soft over the course of the day. His desk lamp was on. On the screen in front of him, a document had been open for the better part of an hour, growing 3 lines at a time, each line chosen carefully. He was not rushing this. He wanted it right. The document was a formal compliance referral. The kind of referral that, once filed, would trigger an automated protocol, enhanced monitoring flags across every account held under the client's name, a 72-hour review freeze on all pending transactions, and a mandatory escalation to the regional compliance board. It was a serious document. It carried real weight. Sterling Blackwood understood that. He understood it and had decided it was warranted. He believed he was being thorough. At 6:47 p.m., his laptop screen split into a video call window. The connection loaded cleanly, and Agent Cecily Drum appeared the regional office behind her, a neutral gray wall. A standing shelf of binders arranged by color. She was compact and precise, the kind of person who held a pen the same way every time. Her burgundy blazer was over a white blouse, buttoned to the collar. Her reading glasses sat on the end of her nose when she looked down and lifted when she looked at him. She had a second screen open beside her that Sterling Blackwood could not see. "Sterling," she said. "Cecily, thanks for jumping on. I know it's late. I pulled the account before you called." She tapped something on her secondary screen. "Walk me through your concern." Sterling Blackwood leaned forward. He had organized his talking points. He had been organizing them since the moment Dr. Owen Hargrove walked out of that lobby and through the glass doors into the afternoon sun. He had used the word organized to himself several times because organizing made this feel like procedure. It made this feel like his job. The client initiated a same-day wire transfer for $2.3 million. He began. No advance notice to the branch. No appointment. He came in with documentation, yes, but the transfer amount triggered our standard high asset review threshold, and when I explained the hold protocol, the client became confrontational. Agent Cecily Drum's reading glasses were down. She was looking at something on her second screen. Define confrontational. Sterling Blackwood's jaw tightened slightly. He challenged the hold, publicly, in front of other customers. He raised his voice. He made comments about the bank's ownership. He implied he had a personal relationship with senior leadership and suggested that calling that leadership directly would resolve the hold. Agent Cecily Drum did not respond immediately. She scrolled something, then she scrolled again. Sterling Blackwood waited, which was not something he was naturally good at. He filled the silence by adjusting the angle of his laptop. "Did the client provide documentation for the transfer destination?" she asked. "Yes." "Was the destination account verified at time of request?" Sterling Blackwood paused one beat too long. "Our verification process takes, was it verified, Sterling? Our team confirmed the account within the standard window, yes." "So yes." She made a note. "Were there prior large transfers on record for this account?" He knew the answer. He had looked it up himself, which is why he had been at his desk for the last hour instead of in his car. There were prior transfers on record. Agent Cecily Drum read from her screen with the same flat intonation she might use to read a grocery list. February of last year, 1.1 million. October, 750,000. March of this year, 1.8 million. 400,000. She looked up. That is 4 documented large transfer events inside 18 months, all processed without incident. Sterling Blackwood said nothing. "Is there any NSF history on this account?" "No." "Any fraud flag, disputed transaction, or suspicious activity report filed at any prior point?" "No." "Any pattern of irregular login, third-party access concerns, or identity verification failures?" The word "no" was getting shorter each time he said it. Agent Cecily Drum removed her reading glasses entirely and set them on the desk in front of her. She looked at him directly through the screen, and there was something in her expression that was not quite disappointment and not quite warning. It was the look of someone who had been asked to do something and had decided, quietly and finally, that she would not do it. "Sterling, I cannot file this referral." "Cecily, there is no compliance basis." She said it the way someone states a fact about weather, not unkindly, not with heat, simply as a thing that was true and would remain true regardless of what happened next. Every standard predicate for enhanced monitoring is absent from this account profile. The transfer amount is within documented client behavior. The destination account cleared verification. The client provided paperwork. The only item you've flagged outside of procedure is that he disagreed with you. He was agitated. You told me he didn't raise his voice. It was the manner of it. Sterling Blackwood straightened in his chair. The way he spoke, the way he looked at me. Agent Cecily Drum was quiet for 3 full seconds. It was the kind of quiet that had shape to it. "If you have concerns you believe warrant escalation," she said, "you can bring them to your regional director. That is the appropriate channel. But I will not attach my signature to a flag that has no predicate, and I would encourage you to be careful about the language you use in any internal documentation." She picked up her reading glasses. "I mean that as a professional courtesy." Sterling Blackwood's expression had gone flat and controlled, the expression of a man who had stopped showing what he was feeling because what he was feeling had become inconvenient. "Understood," he said. The call ended. The video window collapsed and disappeared, and he was alone again with his desk lamp and the open document and the quiet of the empty branch. For a long moment he did nothing. Then he pulled the compliance referral document to the side and opened a new file. He typed slowly at first, then with more confidence as the language came to him. He was not filing a compliance referral. He understood now that route was closed, at least through Cecily Drum, and he had heard her professional courtesy for what it was. He was not a man who missed subtext, but he was also not a man who let things go. He was building something different, an internal incident report, his own language, his own record, logged under his credentials, saved to the branch's incident archive, time-stamped to the day and the hour. It would not freeze accounts, it would not trigger a review board, but it would exist, would sit in the system the way all things sit in systems waiting. He typed the client's name, he typed the date, the time, the transfer amount. He described the hold procedure in careful, neutral terms, citing the appropriate section of the branch operations manual. He described the security presence as routine protocol for high-asset review interactions, which was not technically inaccurate. He described his own conduct as measured and professional, which he believed. He described Dr. Owen Hargrove's response. The sentence took him 3 drafts. The first was too specific. The second used a word he reconsidered. The third found the register he was looking for, the register of institutional language, bloodless and precise, the kind of language that carries a verdict inside a description without ever using the word verdict. He read it back on the screen. Customer exhibited behavior inconsistent with the profile of a legitimate high-value transfer client. He read it a second time. He let it sit. There was no slur in that sentence. There was no visible bias. There was nothing in it that could not be defended with a straight face in a regional director's office, nothing that did not sound, on its surface, like the careful notation of a diligent branch manager doing his due diligence. It was exactly the kind of sentence that bureaucracies were built to absorb without friction, the kind that moved through systems the way water moves through a filtered pipe, the contamination invisible by design. Sterling Blackwood did not think of it that way. He thought of it as accurate. He saved the document. He closed the compliance referral draft without filing it. He shut the laptop, and the branch manager office went darker, just the ambient glow from the after-hours lobby panels, now blue-white and thin, coming through the glass wall. He picked up his jacket from the back of the chair. He straightened his sleeves. He walked through the empty lobby, past the marble counter where the hold notice had been slid across with one finger, past the stanchion ropes, past the teller stations with their blank dark screens, out through the branch's side employee exit into the evening air. He drove home satisfied. That is the word for it. Satisfied, not triumphant, not anxious, not guilty. Satisfied. The way a man is satisfied when he has done the work he set out to do, when he has followed the process as he understood it, when he has protected, in his own estimation, the institution he was responsible for. He had made a documentation record. He had covered the event. He had tried the proper channel and found it unhelpful, and so he had used the channel available to him. He would sleep fine. What Sterling Blackwood did not know what he could not know. Sitting in the amber glow of his desk lamp at 6:47 p.m. in an empty branch, typing a sentence he would read twice and find satisfying, was that the branch's security feed during a high-asset monitoring window is automatically archived to the Regional Operations Center. He did not know that the word automatically meant exactly that. He did not know that 37 seconds of lobby footage from that afternoon was already sitting in a queue that Cassandra Ellis, a board member with a sharp blazer and a sharper eye, would open the following morning during a routine operational review. He did not know that the incident report he had just typed, timestamped, credentialed, and saved in his own words would not disappear into a system the way he assumed institutional records disappeared, that sometimes someone opens the file, that sometimes the file becomes evidence. He did not know that the sentence he read back twice, the one he found so clean and so defensible, would be placed on a desk in front of him in 40 hours by a man who built the institution he had just used as a weapon, and that there would be no language available to him in that room, no protocol to cite, no compliance manual to hide inside. Sterling Blackwood drove home satisfied. The incident report sat in the archive with its timestamp glowing. Across the city, in a hotel suite at the Harmon Grand, Dr. Owen Hargrove was reviewing his keynote notes in a chair by the window, the city lights spread out below him, his leather portfolio on the table beside a cup of coffee he hadn't touched. He was not thinking about Sterling Blackwood. He was thinking about Delwood Heights, about a construction sign, about what the ground would look like after the first shovel went in. He had said it himself in the parking structure. The bank will report itself. He had meant it. The Harmon Grand Hotel did not look like the same city. By 7:30 in the morning, the lobby had already been claimed not by the usual guests or the quiet rotation of business travelers with rolling luggage and half-finished coffee cups, but by something larger, something coordinated and deliberate. Financial press had set up near the far wall, their camera rigs assembled under the overhead lights that blazed white and clean across the marble floor. Natural skylight poured in from the atrium ceiling 2 stories above, the kind of light that made everyone in the room look important whether they were or not. Board members in perfectly tailored dark suits moved in clusters, voices low, handshakes practiced and precise. Catering staff in black jackets and white dress shirts cut through the foot traffic with the quiet efficiency of people who had done this 100 times, carrying trays of water glasses and small arrangements of white flowers toward the ballroom entrance. Dalton Marsh stood near the registration desk in his charcoal suit jacket over a fresh light blue dress shirt and gray trousers, wire-rimmed glasses catching the atrium light as he reviewed his clipboard. He had been there since 6. He had checked the podium microphone twice, confirmed the camera positions with the 3 financial news networks 3 times, and personally walked every row of the 400 chairs to make sure nothing was out of alignment. This was his summit. He had been building it for 8 months. He was not going to let a crooked chair ruin it. At 8:15 a.m., the front doors opened. Dr. Owen Hargrove walked in. He was wearing a charcoal suit jacket over a crisp ivory dress shirt, dark trousers with a clean break at the ankle, and the same leather portfolio from the day before tucked under his left arm. He did not announce himself. He did not need to. Before he had taken 4 steps inside the lobby, a woman from the financial press team near the wall looked up from her equipment and said, "Dr. Hargrove, good morning." 2 steps further, one of the board members broke from his cluster and extended a hand, calling him by name with the warmth of someone greeting a peer they had genuinely been looking forward to seeing. At the elevator bay, a catering supervisor paused his route to nod and say, "They're ready for you in the green room, sir, 8th floor, second left." 3 people, before he reached the elevator, each one saying his name like it meant something. He thanked all 3 of them the same way, a nod, a word, steady eye contact, and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The lobby continued around him, oblivious to the fact that for one quiet moment, a man who had stood flanked by security guards in a marble lobby less than 24 hours ago was now being welcomed into this one like the cornerstone of the whole event. Because he was. Cross town, at the Pinnacle Trust downtown branch, the overhead fluorescents had already been running for 30 minutes. Sterling Blackwood stood at the front of the small conference room behind the teller line, where his 6-person morning staff sat in a row of chairs facing him. He was in his standard navy blazer over a white dress shirt and khaki slacks, a printed agenda in one hand, his usual composure fully intact. He looked like a man who had slept 9 hours and woken up satisfied. "Yesterday," he said, "we had a protocol event that I want to use as a training moment." He walked them through it: the transfer request, the hold notice, the size of the wire, the documentation process. He did not use Dr. Owen Hargrove's name. He referred to the situation as a transfer flag for a high-value transaction without advanced scheduling, which is exactly what the compliance handbook outlined as a hold-eligible event. He told his staff that proper procedure always protects the bank's reputation, even when the client is unhappy in the moment. He said the word professional 4 times in 6 minutes. He asked if there were any questions. There were none. One of the younger tellers, a woman in a white blouse and dark slacks, looked down at the table for a moment during the portion about the guards. Just a moment. She did not raise it. Sterling Blackwood closed the meeting, thanked his team, and walked back to his office. He had already forgotten about Agent Cecily Drum's refusal the night before. He had filed his own incident report. The record existed. As far as he was concerned, his position was documented, justified, and complete. He was a man who slept well because he genuinely believed in the story he told himself. That was, in some ways, the most dangerous thing about him. On the 8th floor of the Harmon Grand, the green room was a wide, well-lit lounge with a long mirror along one wall, a round table with coffee and water, and a small fruit arrangement, and 3 chairs arranged near a window that looked out over the city. The overhead lights were full spectrum and bright. Natural light from the window added depth to the room without creating shadow. Dr. Owen Hargrove set his portfolio on the table, poured half a cup of coffee, and stood at the window for a moment, looking out. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Renata Hargrove, he answered on the second ring. "Mama, Owen." Her voice was the kind of voice that had gotten up early for 50 years and never once complained about it. "I was thinking about you this morning. How did the wire go yesterday? Is the construction account set?" He paused for exactly 1 beat. "There was a delay," he said. "I'm working through it." A pause on her end. She had raised him. She knew the difference between a logistical delay and a diplomatic one. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay, Mama." "You sure?" "I'm speaking today. I'm ready. I'll call you tonight and we'll talk through everything." Another pause, shorter. She had learned over the years to trust the steadiness in his voice even when she could sense what was underneath it. "Okay," she said. "You go do what you do. I'll be here." "I know you will." He set the phone down, looked at the window again. The city spread out below him in the morning light, all steel and glass and distance, all the way out to where the neighborhoods changed, where the buildings got smaller, where the bus routes got longer, where a 12-year-old boy had counted transfers in a hospital waiting room and made a decision that took 23 years to become 2. 3 million and a wire that a man in a navy blazer had blocked with a smile. He picked up his portfolio, opened it, looked at the folded hold notice tucked inside the front flap, exactly where he had placed it the afternoon before. He closed the portfolio. He was ready. At 9:00 a.m., the ballroom doors opened to the 400 attendees. The room was immaculate. The overhead rigs blazed clean white light across every row of chairs, and the stage at the front was set with a single podium, a single microphone, and the summit banner behind it reading, "Capital with Conscience, Pinnacle Trust Investor Summit." Dalton Marsh stood in the wings to the left of the stage, clipboard gone now. Just his hands and his wire-rimmed glasses and the particular stillness of someone who had done everything they could do and was now just waiting to see if it held. The financial news cameras found their marks. The board members settled into the front rows. The 400 chairs filled with people who represented more accumulated capital than most cities could claim. At 9:22 a.m., the summit director introduced Dr. Owen Hargrove. She said his name, his title, his surgical record, the institutions he had advised, the boards he had served. She said the keynote was titled "Capital with Conscience." She said he was one of the most important voices in the intersection of medicine and financial equity working in the country today. She said Pinnacle Trust was honored. The room applauded before he reached the podium. Dr. Owen Hargrove walked onto that stage in his charcoal suit jacket over his ivory dress shirt, his dark trousers, his leather portfolio under his arm, and he stood at the podium for 1 full second before he said anything. He looked out at 400 faces looking back at him, the overhead lights clean and bright, the cameras steady, the room quiet in the way that rooms only get when 400 people are paying genuine attention. He thought about a lobby. Then he began. He did not start with financial theory. He did not open with a statistic or a market trend or a quote from someone impressive. He started with a street. He said the name of it, Callaway Avenue in Delwood Heights, and he described what it looked like on a Tuesday evening when he was 9 years old, and his mother Renata was counting bus transfers in the dark because the neighborhood clinic had closed, and his brother Caleb had a fever that wasn't breaking. The room did not move. He said that trip took 2 hours and 40 minutes each way. He said the ER car pay was $112, which was money they did not have, in the way that some people do not have something, not temporarily, not inconveniently, but structurally, systematically, by design. He said Caleb survived. He said Caleb lost partial hearing in his left ear because they waited too long, because the distance was too far, because the capital that builds clinics had not found its way to Callaway Avenue. He said, "That is what capital without conscience looks like, and I have spent 30 years learning what the alternative costs." He talked about the Hargrove Community Medical Center, not the paperwork version, not the wire transfer version, but the real version. A full-service pediatric and family clinic, zero car pay for uninsured families under a certain income threshold. Same-day appointment system that eliminated the calculation between work and care. A building that would sit at the corner of Callaway Avenue and 5th Street, so that no child on that block would ever have to count bus transfers to reach a doctor. He said, "I am funding this clinic personally, every dollar of it, because I am the proof that investment in communities like Delwood Heights produces exactly the returns you are sitting in these chairs hoping to find. I am the return. I am what happens when someone invests in the right place." The room was completely, absolutely still, and I am here today to tell every institution in this room that the era of capital that flows around communities instead of through them is over, not because it stopped being profitable to ignore them, but because men and women who came from those communities are now in rooms like this one, and we remember exactly what it cost. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Every sentence landed in the silence like something dropped from a great height. When he finished, the room rose. Not politely, not professionally. The 400 people in those chairs stood because they could not stay seated, and the applause that filled the ballroom was the kind that starts in the chest before it reaches the hands. Dalton Marsh, standing in the wings, pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose under his glasses and looked at the ceiling. In the front row, 2 board members were holding up their phones, recording, the screens glowing in the bright room. The financial news cameras held their positions, but the operators behind them were no longer just doing their jobs. In the center aisle, 3 rows from the front, Montgomery Ellis sat with his hands resting on the arms of his chair. He was 73 years old, silver-haired, in his dark suit jacket over a white dress shirt and charcoal trousers, and he had seen a great many things in his life. He had built a bank from a regional lending operation into a national institution. He had sat across tables from senators and CEOs and men who believed that the size of their portfolio was the measure of their character. He watched Dr. Owen Hargrove receive the room's standing ovation with the same dignity he had walked through a lobby with guards at his sides, and Montgomery Ellis did not applaud immediately. He sat for 1 more second, watching. His expression the focused and private look of a man running a calculation that had nothing to do with numbers. Then he stood, and he began to think about what came next. The private lunch suite on the 14th floor of the Harmon Grand Hotel was the kind of room that did not need to announce itself. No chandelier, no gilded trim, no performance of wealth. Just clean lines, a rectangular table set for 2, and floor-ceiling windows that looked out over the city under a sky so clear it looked painted. Overhead, recessed lights ran full and warm. Natural light came in from the south-facing glass in long, honest rectangles that fell across the white tablecloth and the 2 water glasses and the leather portfolio Dr. Owen Hargrove had carried in from the stage. He had been up there for 51 minutes. He had not used notes. Now he sat in a high-backed chair across from Montgomery Ellis, jacket still on, tie still straight, the adrenaline of the keynote settling into something quieter and more permanent in his chest. The room smelled faintly of coffee and something citrus. A single small floral arrangement at the center of the table that neither man had looked at. Montgomery Ellis poured water into both glasses himself, not waiting for a server. That was the thing about him that Dr. Owen Hargrove had noticed 8 years ago at the Medical Philanthropy Gala and had never forgotten. The man poured his own water. He opened his own doors. He paid absolute attention. That was the best keynote I've heard in 11 years of running this summit. Montgomery Ellis said. He was not flattering. He stated it the way he would state a quarterly figure factually, without decoration. His voice had the particular texture of a man in his 70s who had never needed to raise it to be heard. Silver hair, dark suit jacket over a white dress shirt and charcoal trousers, a watch on his left wrist that was expensive only in the way old things are expensive. Quietly, without effort, Dr. Owen Hargrove picked up his water glass. The room made it easy. The room showed up because of you. Montgomery Ellis opened the portfolio in front of him, project documents for the medical center's capital structure, a prospectus Dr. Owen Hargrove had sent him 3 weeks earlier. I want to talk about the foundation partnership. I think there's a structure here that works for both the community and the bank's philanthropic commitments. If we anchor the endowment at Montgomery Ellis's phone buzzed against the table. He glanced at it, set it face down, continued. If we anchor the endowment at 8% of the total build cost, we can tie it to a matching framework. That the phone buzzed again. 2 pulses this time. He looked at it. Something shifted in the line of his mouth, not alarm, not yet, but the particular stillness of a man who recognizes an insistence. He turned the phone face up, read the screen, and placed it back down. Forgive me, he said to Dr. Owen Hargrove, and his tone had changed in a way that was almost invisible but not quite. Give me 2 minutes. Dr. Owen Hargrove nodded. He turned toward the south-facing windows and looked out at the city. Below, the summit traffic was still moving through the hotel's main entrance, attendees filtering out to afternoon sessions, press crews packing gear. From 14 floors up, the city looked orderly, patient, like it did not know anything had happened yesterday at all. He heard the suite door open and close behind him. In the 14th floor corridor, the carpet was a deep charcoal, and the light came from sconces spaced evenly along the walls, clean and direct. Cassandra Ellis was waiting 12 feet from the door. She was her father's daughter. In the way that mattered, she had his stillness and his precision, but where Montgomery Ellis had aged into quiet, Cassandra Ellis was somewhere in her early 40s and still carried an edge to her composure. The sharpness of a woman who had sat in enough boardrooms to know what smoke looked like before the fire. She wore a steel blue blazer over a high-collared ivory blouse and tailored charcoal trousers, a tablet held flat against her forearm, like she had been holding it long enough to have decided something about what was on it. Dad, she kept her voice low, I need you to see something. Montgomery Ellis looked at her face before he looked at the tablet. He had been reading her face since she was 2 years old. He knew the difference between urgent and serious. This was the second one. I was in the operational review this morning, she said, cross-referencing branch-level compliance inquiries against active high-value accounts, standard quarterly process. There was a flag filed yesterday afternoon. Branch level, not regional, hand-filed by a branch manager, not routed through the compliance officer. She paused. The account name matched the keynote speaker. Montgomery Ellis did not move. I dug further, Cassandra Ellis continued. She turned the tablet toward him. The branch security system feeds to the regional operations center whenever an account enters high asset monitoring status. When the branch manager filed the flag, it triggered an automatic capture window. She tapped the screen once. 37 seconds. The footage was timestamped 3:22 p.m. the previous afternoon. The camera angle was high and wide, the kind that banks use not to surveil customers, but to surveil their own floors, everything visible, everything in light. The lobby of the Pinnacle Trust downtown branch, under full overhead fluorescent illumination and afternoon natural light through the glass facade. Montgomery Ellis watched. The marble counter, 2 tellers visible at their stations behind the glass. A line of customers, 11 of them, all turned, all watching, in the way people watch when they know something is wrong but cannot name it yet. A young woman with a stroller near the far wall, frozen mid-motion. And at the counter, a man in a slate-gray surgical top and dark slacks, a leather portfolio on the marble in front of him, his posture completely and deliberately still. On his left, a security guard in a short-sleeved black uniform. On his right, another, framing him, not positioned in front of him, not behind him, beside him, positioned for visibility. In front of Dr. Owen Hargrove, across the counter, Sterling Blackwood in his navy blazer, sliding a piece of paper with one finger. The sound was absent from the footage, but the language of the image was not. The smile was readable even at this resolution. The practiced, casual authority of it. The guards who did not move when the paper was delivered. The lobby that watched. 37 seconds. Montgomery Ellis handed the tablet back to his daughter. He was quiet for a moment that was not short. Then he straightened his jacket. One motion. The lapels, the button, a slight pull of the sleeves. The small, habitual self-correction of a man preparing to walk into something. Who else has seen this? He asked. Cecily Drum's office has the compliance inquiry on record. She declined to file it. Her documentation is clean. Cassandra Ellis held the tablet against her forearm again. The incident report is the branch manager's alone, his language. She paused. I have it printed if you need it. I'll need it tomorrow, Montgomery Ellis said. Not tonight. He looked at the door to the suite. Tonight, he said, I owe that man an apology. When Montgomery Ellis walked back into the room, Dr. Owen Hargrove had not moved from the window. He was still looking out at the city, his water glass on the table, the portfolio open to the capital structure pages. Montgomery Ellis crossed the room. He did not sit immediately. He stood at the edge of the table and waited until Dr. Owen Hargrove turned to face him. Then he sat down. He did not straighten any papers. He did not reach for his water. He looked directly at Dr. Owen Hargrove and said, very quietly, I owe you an apology on behalf of my bank. The room held the silence for a beat. Dr. Owen Hargrove looked at him. His face did not open into surprise, did not close into anger. Something in his eyes shifted in a way that was almost imperceptible, the recognition of a man who had been carrying something alone for 24 hours and had just heard someone else name the weight of it. You saw it. He said it was not a question. Montgomery Ellis nodded once. My daughter flagged an anomaly in the operational review. The security system captured it. He paused. All of it. Dr. Owen Hargrove did not look away. He set his hands flat on the table, not clasped, just still. The guards were the part that was designed to be seen, he said. That's what I kept thinking afterward, not the hold. The hold was paperwork. The guards were a statement, placed where the lobby could read them. Montgomery Ellis was quiet, the particular quiet of a man who founded something over the course of a working lifetime and has just been shown what someone used it for. You didn't come to me last night, he said, or this morning. No. Why? Dr. Owen Hargrove considered the question as if it deserved consideration. Outside the windows, the afternoon light was beginning its slow turn toward the west, the city below unchanged, unbothered, continuous. Because I wanted to give the thing the space to be what it was, he said, without my intervention, without me managing its exposure. He looked at Montgomery Ellis steadily. The bank was either going to surface this or it was going to bury it. I needed to know which one. Montgomery Ellis absorbed that. He reached for his water glass, held it without drinking. And what would you have done if it had been buried? I would have spoken to you, Dr. Owen Hargrove said. Directly, privately, exactly as I would have spoken to any man I respect who needed to know a difficult thing about something he built. The response settled in the room with the weight of something thought through long before this moment. Montgomery Ellis set his glass down. The wire will clear, he said. I'll see to it personally this afternoon, not through the branch, through the executive office. He paused. And I would like to ask something of you if you're willing, Dr. Owen Hargrove waited. Come with me tomorrow morning, Montgomery Ellis said, to the branch, just the two of us. He said it without theater, without strategy visible in his voice. I want the manager to understand what he did, not through a memo, not through a regional directive delivered by email. I want him to understand it in the room where it happened, in front of the people it happened in front of. Dr. Owen Hargrove was still for a moment. Then, what time? 9 o'clock. The branch opens at 9. I have a surgical consult at noon. We'll be done before 10. Dr. Owen Hargrove looked at the table, at the capital structure document still open in front of him, at the project name printed cleanly at the top of the first page, Hargrove Community Medical Center, Delwood Heights. The 2.3 million wire that had been treated as a suspicion. The children who did not know yet that a building was being raised for them. His brother Caleb, who had walked out of a hospital at age 9 with hearing loss in one ear because the distance between Delwood Heights and adequate care had been too expensive to close in time. He looked back up at Montgomery Ellis. All right, he said. Montgomery Ellis nodded. He picked up his pen. He turned to the capital structure pages. Then let's finish what we came here to do, he said. The foundation partnership. I still want that endowment conversation. And they returned to the documents together, two men in a sunlit room at the top of a hotel, the city outside unchanged, the branch 11 blocks away still open, Sterling Blackwood still behind his glass-walled office, still unaware of what was already in motion, still confident in the rightness of everything he had done. The footage existed, the record was clean, and tomorrow morning was already decided. Dr. Owen Hargrove turned a page in the portfolio and said, calmly and precisely, exactly what needed to be said next about the endowment structure. He had been patient for 24 hours. He could be patient for one more night. Wednesday morning arrives the way ordinary mornings always do, indifferent to everything that happened before it. The sun comes up over downtown without ceremony. The glass facade of Pinnacle Trust's flagship branch catches the early light and throws it back onto the sidewalk in long, clean rectangles. By 8:45 a.m., the overhead fluorescents are on inside, humming their steady white hum, and the lobby fills with the kind of brightness that makes everything look normal. Balanced, routine, like Monday never happened. Sterling Blackwood is at his desk by 8:50. He has been there since 8:40, actually, because Sterling Blackwood is a man who arrives early when he believes he has nothing to answer for. He is wearing his standard navy blazer over a white dress shirt and khaki slacks, a coffee in a ceramic mug to his left, the morning transaction queue open on his screen. He scrolls through it with the satisfied energy of someone who spent the night sleeping deeply, who filed his documentation, who followed his protocol, who did what managers are supposed to do when something feels wrong. He has already decided that yesterday confirmed something he suspected, that his instincts are sharper than people give him credit for. He tells himself this without using those exact words. He uses words like thoroughness and due diligence and protecting the institution. Same thing, different packaging. The branch opens at 9:00 a.m. 3 tellers take their positions behind the glass. Reginald Stokes arrives at 8:58 and signs in at the security station near the front entrance. He is wearing the same short-sleeved black security uniform he wore on Monday. He sets his bag down. He rolls his shoulders once. He does not think about Monday the way Sterling Blackwood does not think about Monday. They are both thinking about it constantly, from opposite directions, for entirely different reasons. The first customers of the morning come in. A woman in a yellow cardigan deposits a check. A young man in a gray hoodie and dark jeans asks about refinancing. 2 older gentlemen in separate lines. The lobby does what lobbies do: it fills, it hums, it transacts. Overhead fluorescent light falls evenly on everything. Natural light pours through the glass facade from the street. It is, by all visible indicators, a normal Wednesday. At 9:14 a.m., a black car stops at the curb outside. Reginald Stokes sees it first. That is the order of things: the man nearest the door, the man who has been watching the street, because watching the street is what he does, the man who on Monday was placed beside another man and felt the full moral weight of that assignment settle on him like a piece of equipment he had not agreed to wear. Reginald Stokes watches the car door open. He watches one man step out, then another. He recognizes Dr. Owen Hargrove immediately, the same bearing, the same unhurried quality of movement, except today Dr. Owen Hargrove is in a dark suit jacket over a crisp white dress shirt and dark trousers, the leather portfolio under his arm. And beside him, side by side on the morning sidewalk, is a man Reginald Stokes has only ever seen in photographs. Montgomery Ellis does not look like power the way that Sterling Blackwood looks like authority. Sterling Blackwood looks like authority because he has arranged himself to look that way: the blazer, the desk behind glass, the practiced confidence of someone performing a role. Montgomery Ellis looks like power the way old trees look like old trees. He is in his 70s, silver-haired, wearing a dark suit jacket over a white dress shirt and charcoal trousers. He walks without urgency. He does not check his phone. He does not adjust his cuffs. He simply comes through the front door of his own bank, the way a man comes into a room he owns, which is to say, he comes in quietly and the room knows. Reginald Stokes does not move. He stands very still, the way a person stands when they are recalibrating everything at once. Montgomery Ellis crosses the threshold and nods pleasantly at the teller nearest the door. Just a nod. Small, genuine. The teller nods back, and then recognition crosses her face in stages. The way a light comes on in a room, first the flicker, then the full brightness. She says nothing. She looks at the teller beside her. That teller looks up. Then the third one. In 7 seconds, every person behind the glass has stopped what they were doing. The 2 customers at the counter notice. Then the people in line notice the people at the counter noticing. The lobby does not go loud. It goes the opposite of loud. It goes the kind of quiet that has texture to it, weight to it. The specific silence of a room where everyone suddenly understands that something is happening that is not on the morning schedule. Montgomery Ellis moves toward the glass-walled office at the back of the lobby. Dr. Owen Hargrove walks beside him. Neither of them speaks to anyone. They do not need to. Sterling Blackwood looks up from his screen. His face moves through 4 expressions in approximately 3 seconds. The first is the automatic professionalism of a branch manager registering a visitor, a minor preparation, a gathering of composure. The second is recognition, partial and arriving from the wrong direction, because the face is familiar but the context is wrong, the context is impossible, and his mind is working to correct it. The third is understanding, and it is not a good understanding. It is the kind that arrives with a physical sensation somewhere behind the sternum. The fourth expression is the one he chooses: the recovery, the professional reset, the smile assembled from whatever reserve of confidence he has left. He comes out of his office. He begins a greeting. He says something about good morning, about a pleasure, about how he is always glad to welcome Montgomery. Ellis does not let him finish. Not rudely, not with raised volume or a sharp gesture. He simply speaks clearly and directly before Sterling Blackwood can complete the sentence he has started. Montgomery Ellis, he says, his first name, his last name, no title, no theater. I'd like to speak with you in your office, just the 3 of us. Sterling Blackwood's assembled smile holds for 1 second after he stops talking. Then it does something more complicated. He glances at Dr. Owen Hargrove, the first time he has looked at him directly since Monday, and Dr. Owen Hargrove looks back at him with an expression that communicates precisely nothing. No satisfaction, no heat, no performance of any kind. He is simply there, present, unhurried. And somehow that is the most devastating thing Sterling Blackwood has ever seen on another person's face, because it tells him that whatever is about to happen has already been decided. And it was decided without anger, and that means it was decided with something much more durable. They go into the office. The door closes. Through the glass wall, the lobby watches. Reginald Stokes has not moved from his position near the front entrance. He does not move for the duration of what follows. He watches the glass-walled office the way a witness watches, with the full attention of someone who needs to see this through, who is present for the beginning and understands that presence at the end is its own kind of accounting. Inside the office, Montgomery Ellis does not sit. He stands behind the visitor's chair and places a folder on Sterling Blackwood's desk. He opens it without ceremony. The first document is the hold notice, Sterling Blackwood's own form, his own signature at the bottom. Montgomery Ellis places it on the desk and smooths it once with the flat of his hand. The second document is the incident report Sterling Blackwood filed Tuesday evening after Agent Cecily Drum ended the compliance call. His own language, his own record. The sentence at the bottom: customer exhibited behavior inconsistent with the profile of a legitimate high-value transfer client, faces upward in clean black type under the overhead fluorescent light. The third item is a printed photograph. It is a still image from the branch security footage. Shows Dr. Owen Hargrove at the marble counter with a security guard positioned on either side of him and Sterling Blackwood across the counter wearing his assembled smile. The overhead fluorescence and the natural light through the glass facade have made the image very clear. Nothing is shadowed. Nothing is ambiguous. Every face in it is legible. Montgomery Ellis places his hand flat on the desk, fingers spread, and looks at Sterling Blackwood. His voice does not change register. He asks Sterling Blackwood to explain, in his own words, what compliance basis justified stationing security personnel on either side of a client. Sterling Blackwood begins with protocol. He uses the word standard several times. He uses the phrase for transfers of this size. He mentions the obligation to protect the institution. He mentions due diligence. He says the word threshold. He uses all the same words he used when he was confident they were the right words. And in this room, under this particular quality of silence, they land differently. They land like furniture being moved into a space where the dimensions are wrong, the pieces are recognizable, but they do not fit. And the longer he talks, the more apparent that becomes. Montgomery Ellis lets him finish. He does not interrupt. He does not correct him mid-sentence. He waits with the patience of a man who has been making consequential decisions for 50 years and understands that you let the record complete itself before you close it. When Sterling Blackwood stops talking, Montgomery Ellis reaches into the folder a second time. He places Dr. Owen Hargrove's full client account profile on the desk. 3 accounts, 15 years of transaction history, a financial portfolio publicly valued at over $40 million, 4 prior large-scale wire transfers to charitable and community construction accounts, each documented, each cleared. He places the keynote biography beside it. Dr. Owen Hargrove's name on the Pinnacle Trust Investor Summit program, on the stage of the Harmon Grand Hotel, in the center aisle of a room with 400 chairs and cameras from 3 financial news networks. He places the letter from the Hargrove Community Medical Center project beside that. The letterhead, the construction timeline, the account number of the wire destination, the same account number that was on the hold notice, now sitting 3 inches to the left. Montgomery Ellis looks at Sterling Blackwood and says, with the even unhurried delivery of a man who has already finished deciding that the wire will clear today. He says it simply as a statement of fact about something that is already in motion, because it is. Then he says that Sterling Blackwood's regional director will be in contact by end of business. He closes the folder. He straightens. He picks up the folder. And through all of it, from the moment the office door closed to this moment, from the hold notice to the incident report to the security footage still, to the full account profile laid out in sequence on a desk under overhead fluorescent light, Dr. Owen Hargrove has not said a single word. He has stood to Montgomery Ellis's right with his leather portfolio under his arm and his hands still at his sides, and his expression carrying nothing that can be used against him. Nothing that can be characterized, nothing that can be written into an incident report as agitation or challenge or inconsistency. He has been, in the most complete and considered way possible, simply present, and his silence has been louder than anything Sterling Blackwood has heard in that office in all the years he has managed it. They leave. The office door opens, and Montgomery Ellis and Dr. Owen Hargrove walk back through it and into the lobby. In the lobby, a dozen customers and every member of the branch staff, under overhead fluorescence and morning light through the glass facade, watches them in complete silence. No one speaks. No one moves. Montgomery Ellis nods again at the teller nearest the door. The same small, genuine nod as when he came in. Then he and Dr. Owen Hargrove walk through the lobby and out through the glass doors into the morning. Reginald Stokes watches them go. He watches until the black car pulls away from the curb. Then he faces forward again, standing at his post, his hands at his sides, his short-sleeved black uniform the same as it was on Monday, but something in the set of his shoulders is different. Something has shifted, the way weight shifts when you set something down that you have been carrying without fully knowing you were carrying it. Behind the glass wall, Sterling Blackwood sits back down at his desk. Transaction queue is still open on his screen. The morning continues around him, the tellers returning to their windows, the customers at the counter completing their transactions, the lobby resuming its ordinary hum under the ordinary light of a Wednesday. His phone will ring at 3:47 p.m. It will be his regional director. But that is later. Right now, Sterling Blackwood sits at his desk in a branch he managed, in a bank he did not build, and stares at his screen, and understands for the first time fully, finally, without the protection of protocol or procedure, or the language of due diligence, exactly what he did. 3 weeks is not a long time, not in a life, not in a neighborhood that has been waiting 20 years for someone to stop pointing at it from a distance and actually walk through it. But 3 weeks after a wire clears, after a statement goes out under a founder's name, after a man who slept well behind a glass-walled office begins to reckon with what that sleep cost him, 3 weeks can feel like a turning of the earth. And today, it literally is. Delwood Heights woke up to a Tuesday morning, so clean and bright, it felt almost deliberate. The sky above the construction site on Renner Avenue holds no clouds. Overhead, the sun pushes straight down through the open air, bouncing off folding chair legs and yellow hard hats stacked on a table near the stage entrance. 200 people have filled this lot, neighbors in their good clothes, city officials with lanyards and firm handshakes, medical colleagues from the hospital in blazers they do not normally wear on a weekday, press with cameras and tripods, and children, actual children from this actual neighborhood, standing close to the chain-link sections that still frame the site's edges, looking at the stage like something real is finally happening to them. The wire cleared the morning after the branch visit. Morning after Montgomery Ellis placed 4 documents on a desk and asked one question and waited. Pinnacle Trust's formal statement followed within 48 hours. Full internal review of branch-level client treatment protocols, regionally distributed, publicly issued. Sterling Blackwood was placed on administrative leave pending formal review by the Regional Compliance Board, and Agent Cecily Drum's documentation, the call she refused to sign. The questions she asked, the record she kept became the spine of that review. Dalton Marsh called Dr. Owen Hargrove twice. The first call was professional. The second call was personal. Dr. Owen Hargrove answered both. None of that is what today is about. Dr. Owen Hargrove stands at the groundbreaking podium in a dark suit jacket over a crisp white dress shirt and deep navy trousers. The yellow hard hat is in his left hand, held at his side, not on his head. He is not wearing it yet because this moment, this specific moment before he speaks, belongs to the looking. He looks out at the crowd and finds the people he needs to find. Renata Hargrove is in the front row. Floral blouse, cream slacks, a small silver pin on her collar that Owen gave her 2 Christmases ago. She is already crying. Not the kind of crying that needs a reason, announced she has known the reason for 30 years. She has been carrying it on 3 buses in the dark, in a waiting room with flickering overhead lights, in a hospital corridor where a doctor told her Caleb would live, but something would be different. She cries because her son is standing on the ground where a clinic will be, and she knows what that means to every mother in this neighborhood who is not her. Vivienne Osai stands beside Renata Hargrove, one hand resting gently on her arm, her own eyes bright, watching Owen with the particular attention of someone who was in that bank lobby 3 weeks ago and will never forget what she saw standing next to a marble counter in surgical clothes. At the far edge of the crowd, near the leftmost section of chain-link fence, a man stands in a dark button-down shirt and dark jeans. No uniform, no badge, no assignment. Reginald Stokes came to this groundbreaking the same way anyone who feels something comes to the thing that called them on his own time, on his own terms, because something in him needed to see how this ended. He stands with his hands in his pockets and watches the podium and the crowd. He does not know Dr. Owen Hargrove. Not personally, but he was there. He stood on the wrong side of a moment and knew it while he was standing in it, and today he's standing somewhere different. Dr. Owen Hargrove leans toward the microphone. He does not begin with the bank. He does not say the word incident or hold or protocol. He does not mention a navy blazer or a marble counter or a smile that held barely. He does not need to. Everyone who needs to know already knows. And the people standing on this dirt today did not come to relitigate. They came to witness. He begins with Caleb. He says his brother's name once clearly, and half the crowd does not need to hear anything else. Caleb Hargrove stands in the 3rd row, hearing aid visible in his left ear, standing straight, watching Owen with an expression that is not pride exactly, it is older than pride, quieter. The look of a man who knows that his brother has been building toward this specific morning since they were boys waiting for a bus in the dark. Dr. Owen Hargrove talks about distance. Not miles, but the kind of distance measured in minutes between a child with a spiking fever and someone trained to treat it. He talks about what proximity to care does to a community, not just to the sick, but to everyone around them, the mothers who do not sleep, the fathers who calculate carpes before they call for help, the children who learn too early that their bodies are a problem that requires a journey. He talks about what happens when someone who grew up counting bus transfers ends up with the means to close that distance permanently. He does not use the word finally, he uses the word now. The crowd is quiet in the way that crowds go quiet when they feel seen, not silenced, but held. He steps back from the microphone. A volunteer hands him the ceremonial shovel. Dr. Owen Hargrove carries it to the marked patch of Delwood Heights earth, plants the blade, and drives it down with everything he has. The soil turns. The crowd erupts. 200 people making noise in a neighborhood that has been asking to be heard for 2 decades. And then Renata Hargrove is through the folding chairs and across the dirt, and she pulls her son into her arms in the afternoon sun, and he holds her. And behind them, the sign reads exactly what it always said: future home of the Hargrove Community Medical Center, except now, at the bottom, in clean bold letters added just this morning, one new line: breaking ground today. You just heard a story that history tried to overlook. If it stayed with you, take a second to stand with it. Subscribe, share, and help us keep telling the stories that deserve light, not silence.